They said my cedar fence was 2 inches too wide. Then they fined me $2,600, revoked my building permit, and accused me of trying to rezone the neighborhood. I'm not kidding. I'm Ben Laramie. Civil engineer, father of 2, homeowner in the Glenridge Bluffs subdivision for 6 quiet years. I followed every HOA rule, read the CC and RS cover to cover before I even made an offer on the house. But the day I decided to replace my old picket fence, that's when the lights started flickering. The contractor was licensed, the materials were pre-approved, and I even went down to the county clerk's office to verify my property line. I submitted the plans 3 times. I got the written green light. And 2 weeks into construction, I got the envelope. Citation 438B, fence exceeds width limitation by 2.13 inches. Non-compliant structure. Fines accrue daily. I called the HOA office. No answer. I emailed. Crickets. I hand-delivered a copy of the permit to the association president, Dan Martin, who opened his screen door just wide enough to say, "Should have read the bylaws more carefully." Then, click. Door shut. I'll admit it. At first, I thought I had messed up. Maybe some obscure line in the architectural guidelines I missed. But then the fine doubled. Then tripled. And 2 board members showed up unannounced to photograph the side of my house like I was some kind of criminal. It felt personal. And it was about to get worse. A week later, my neighbor Carla stopped me mid-lawn mow. "You know they're talking about you, right? That you tried to cheat the HOA?" I blinked. "Cheat?" "Yeah," she said, lowering her voice. "Board said you submitted forged measurements. That you're trying to game the property lines. They even said you threatened Dan." I stood there, stunned, mower humming idle behind me. I'd done none of that. But it wasn't just Carla. Next door kids stopped waving. A contractor canceled a landscaping bid. At the dog park, people moved their chairs when I sat down. Then someone slid a note into my mailbox. "We don't want liars here." Knowledge nugget number 1, HOAs cannot enforce anonymous fines or retroactive rule changes. All enforcement must follow published guidelines and documented procedure. Use this if you're ever cited unfairly. That night, I dug deeper. And something felt off. Dan Martin had only been HOA president for 8 months, but already he'd changed the landscaping contractor, security company, and raised dues by 14%, without a community vote. I searched the public ledger. Then I found it. A payment, $11,800, from HOA funds to Ridgefield Compliance Solutions. A company registered just 6 months prior, under Dan Martin's wife's name. This wasn't about my fence. This was a shakedown. I started asking questions. Quietly. I filed a public record request. I spoke to a former board member. He asked not to be named, and he said, "Dan uses citations as leverage. Non-compliance fees go to processing firms, and those firms are all just shells." And then he hung up. Next morning, there was a fresh citation on my door. Unlawful exterior lighting. I don't even have exterior lighting. Then came the certified letter, subject to lien. I had 10 days to pay the full amount or risk foreclosure. That's when I went federal. I contacted a land surveyor friend. We ran full boundary checks, used aerial drone data, laser leveling, GPS overlays. The results showed my fence didn't just comply, it was inside the legal boundary by over 4 inches. I got it notarized, sealed, and signed. But here's the twist. In the process, we discovered something much bigger. 3 other homes on the block. Their fences had identical dimensions, some even wider. No citations. All signed off by Dan himself. But one thing connected those homes, each belonged to current or former HOA board members. Knowledge nugget number 2, selective enforcement violates equal protection clauses under most state HOA statutes. If your HOA targets you, but not others for the same issue, it's grounds for legal action. I'd caught him. I filed complaints with the county's Ethics Commission, the State Attorney General's office, and the IRS, yes, the IRS. Because if Ridgefield Compliance Solutions was funneling HOA funds into personal accounts, that's tax fraud. And I wasn't alone anymore. Carla joined me. Then Brian and Jess from 2 streets over. Turns out they'd been hit with non-compliance letters for minor mailbox paint chips, but only after voting against one of Dan's pet projects, a $30,000 decorative pond behind his house. We pooled our documents. Screenshot every receipt. Highlighted line items. One neighbor had a voicemail from Dan threatening to revoke community access if they didn't stop complaining. Screenshot this clause and tag a friend who needs HOA armor. If your HOA sends you a fine, demand a breakdown of what rule was violated, the evidence, and how others in the community have been treated under the same rule. We filed a class complaint. And the dominoes started to fall. Lawyers. Depositions. One former treasurer came forward and testified that Ridgefield was at the clearinghouse for Dan's discretionary spending. The HOA president used citation fees to pay for gym memberships, car repairs, even a Vegas hotel bill. Dan went silent. HOA meetings turned chaotic. At one, someone threw a trash bag full of shredded paper on the table and yelled, "Here's your transparency." Then came the raid. Not dramatic, but precise. IRS investigators. 2 plainclothes officers. They boxed up the HOA's financials and walked out without a word. Dan was arrested 5 days later. Knowledge nugget number 3, if you suspect HOA fraud, request a full audit of financials. By law, most states require HOAs to make financial records available to members upon written request. If they stall, something's wrong. We voted in a new board within a month. Dan pled no contest to 2 counts of wire fraud. His wife took a deal. The fence? It's still up. Untouched. And now 3 inches wider, just out of spite. We created a neighborhood transparency portal. All budgets, contracts, and rules are visible online. Fines dropped 78% in 6 months. Funny thing is, when people aren't afraid of being targeted, they actually start showing up to meetings. And that patch of dirt where Dan wanted his vanity pond, we turned it into a community garden. But here's the part ones still think about. Last week, I got a plain envelope. No return address. Inside, just a key, and a sticky note that read, "You missed something." No signature. Just that. Next week, the city that tried to steal a solar farm, and the one janitor who stopped them.